Innovation for me now is actually simplicity. And that sounds counterintuitive, but it's very challenging. Like simplicity is very hard because there's so many things that people are looking for. And to me, the innovative front, I look at this kind of in two parallel tracks. There's the behind the scenes that no one sees and no one touches and the guest never is exposed to, but is indirectly exposed to. And that's a lot of ways when we innovate is in terms of how can we use technology and data that we have in our guests to be able to curate better experiences without them knowing.
Welcome to UnNatural Selection, a show about competition, innovation, and the strategies shaping tomorrow's frontiers. I'm Nick Encina. Each week, we speak with pioneers shaping the future.
Today is a big one. Episode 50 and the Season 2 premiere, released on Cinco de Mayo. Tacos might be one of the most commoditized products on the planet. You can get them everywhere at every price point in almost every city, which raises a deceptively simple question. How do you build a truly distinctive brand around something so common? Anthony Valletta, CEO of Bartaco, joins us to unpack exactly that. This conversation is about escaping the commodity trap and why the real product in hospitality isn't the food, but the experience, the feeling, and the sense of belonging that keeps people coming back. If you've ever wondered how brands stand out in crowded markets, this episode is a masterclass in turning something ordinary into something unforgettable. Let's go.
Anthony, welcome to UnNatural Selection.
Thanks. Nice to be here, Nick.
It's really great to have you here, and especially on the topic that I've never met a person that said, I don't like tacos.
We caught the right trend at the right time, I think. That's for sure.
I think so. Yeah, you definitely did your market research. But before diving into the topic itself, I'd like to start with the same question just to give you a chance to level set and give people context for why you do what you do. So,
Sure.
Anthony, can you please let us know what need or impact drives your work?
Yeah, for me, it's about an escape. You think that life is just moving so fast. You look at technology and AI and all these things every day. It's like, oh my God, I can't keep up. And to me, the need we fulfill is that escape to be able to put down everything and just take a breath and enjoy who sits across from the table with you, enjoy some good food and drink, but most of all, just enjoy like the environment that you're sitting in. And to me, I think that need is growing more rapidly than it ever has previously. And that started for me when I was a young kid. Like my grandfather inspired me to get in this industry, not because he was in it, but because that's where those moments of escape from my life and his were had. They shared over a dinner table with the old red and white checkered tablecloths. And like, to me, that was my escape that I still remember now 40 years later. So I always have that want to recreate that same thing for all the guests that come to my building.
Yeah. I definitely can identify with that. It's in society things seem to happen in these like wild swings. You go to one extreme, then to the other, then to the other. And I also remember, kind of all the social events in the family, most of them happen around the dinner table. That's where you really bond. That's where you get to know people. And then our technology has really shifted us towards another extreme. I feel like it's only a matter of time before people realize what we miss and we start just gearing back towards that communion and sharing around dinner.
I think you're absolutely right. And honestly, you're starting to see it now. I mean, there's been some research that's been done in terms of the younger generation, everybody's talking about that saying, oh, they're too technology forward. They're actually looking to get away from it. They want some of that escape. And I think restaurants are becoming that place again, which is why you see some of the, QSR has had a really good run for a while last year and casual dining starting to make a comeback. And I think that's a sense of place of, I don't have to be on a POS tablet, or I don't have to be on my phone. I can actually engage and get away from that. I think you're right. I think we're just starting to scratch the surface in the coming 3 to 5 years as technology continues to rise so fast. I think we're going to see a lot more of, man, I just miss sitting across the table and having a cold beer with Nick and talking for 30 minutes. I mean, it's
Exactly.
it's something that I think will never go away, at least in the future I can see.
Oh yeah, when I think about the moments that were really that made an impression on me as a person, the moments that I really reflect back to what built a great friendship or a great relationship, it was never on a text. It was
Yeah.
always over a drink, over a meal. Really engaging with somebody, having a great conversation. So
Yeah,
I,
absolutely.
I I definitely think that it's an industry that suffered because of the technological shift and because of COVID. But I think it's something that's so fundamental to society, and hopefully it does swing back in that direction.
Yeah, I hope so. For many reasons.
Yeah. And so, the audience of this show is very diverse. It's professionals from across very diverse fields, and so not all of them know the essence and what goes into restaurant hospitality. So for all the people that really don't know the ins and outs of it, for a lot of people, it's like, oh, you make tacos and you serve them, you know. So it's clearly there's a lot more into running a business and
Yeah.
making it something that's truly unique. So can you give us a sense of how complex restaurant hospitality is, and particularly in your industry, the modern restaurant industry? So what actually goes into it beyond just serving food?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's so funny you mentioned that because people are like, man, I want your job. You serve tacos and tequila. It must be so much fun. And it is. That's the essence of what we do. But it is so complex. And you have to be the jack of all trades, master of none in this industry because there's so much that goes into it. And, I think the big component people forget is anybody can make a great taco, right? To take my brand. Anybody can make a great drink. Like, I think we have the best margarita, but so does everybody else in the world. And while the technical part of creating the right menu and analyzing that month to month, sure, that's table stakes. But the real challenge is when you think about, I challenge my team all the time, when a guest walks in the door of any restaurant, they all come from a totally different background. Like what they're walking in there for, what they believe, how their day is, what they're trying to accomplish by being at your restaurant. And the complexity really comes of trying to understand how do you create, let's call it 200 individual experiences during the same hour. And that's really tough. And you're doing that with, some college kids, high school kids, younger that's not their priority. They're going in to take care of somebody, give them some good food and service, make a tip and go home. So the complexity really comes of building this environment and being able to analyze and use the back end of technology to be able to push that information out to your staff, even to your guests in terms of marketing, to be able to make sure it feels like there's a personalization there, that it feels that I understand that you've walked in here to have a business meeting while a table next to you is an anniversary and the table next to you is two high school friends and they're all looking for something different. And I always tell my team that each guest walks into our restaurant with a number above their head. It's a score of their day. Some people have a crappy day, some people have a great day. And our job is to improve that score. We don't know what the score is. They don't tell us when they walk in, and they don't tell us when they walk out. They might in a review. But to do that is not as simple as just give them a good taco and a good margarita. It's what level of engagement do you want? How does the music sound? How is the environment? Like to us, it's more about the vibe. Like our brand was actually not initially intended to be a restaurant.
Hmm.
When it was founded, we talked more about what we wanted a space to feel like. We had an interesting piece of real estate. We kind of were looking at what can we do with this. And the original founder that was the creative, just like, I want this feeling of like the coastal relaxation in Uruguay and Southern California. And it seemed like it's some surf culture. So maybe we sell some surf ideas. And then, but I want a bar. And all of a sudden it kind of came through. Well, it's just a restaurant. But we spend more time on the technical side of talking about how the restaurant feels than we even talk about necessarily the menu or the drink. We listen to hundreds of songs a week to not even feed an algorithm to manually go through and actually curate playlists based off the location. We spend time on all of the environment in terms of plants or even tchotchkes that are on the shelves. You don't realize it, but the psychology of sitting down and in the things you see but don't see, right? If I asked you what was on the shelf, you're like, I actually don't know. I didn't really pay attention, but you did. And it creates the sense of place that you're in. And I think now when you look at least my industry specifically, it's becoming more and more about experience and not experience like, a top golfer or something like an experience in terms of like what the entire environment provides and what that value is. And that's becoming oddly enough, less and less about food and drink.
Hmm.
Cause everybody's a chef now with their iPhones. Like I can go on to an AI and you can get the recipe for anything. You can sound like an expert in 20 seconds. And that part isn't as challenging as it used to be even a decade ago. So you have to be able to find ways to really curate these custom experiences, make the environment feel really differentiated, and do all that while making money in one of the most challenging industries out there.
Hmm.
Like the interesting thing, I spoke not too long ago in Denver to a large group of business leaders, all different sectors, and I said, imagine waking up every day and not knowing that you had any guaranteed sales. Like no contract signed, no clients. Every day you
Yeah.
wake up with zero coming into your bank account and you take a perishable product and you prepare it and you schedule people hoping someone walks in the door and you make all these plans. and you don't know what's going to happen. And then when people do come in, you learn each day and you adapt. So the margins on the business are so tight. So
Mhm.
you're trying to create all these amazing things just to put food in front of a guest with one of the tightest margin businesses that are out there. And the guests, to your point and your question, don't ever see that. They just see, what's so hard about this? You
Yeah.
threw some fish in a fryer and threw it on a taco and gave me a margarita with tequila. I do that at home. Like, why is that so hard? This is what I paid you for. And it's not hard, but it is.
Yeah.
And that's the challenging part. I always say, like, we're just tacos and tequila. We're not curing cancer, but it's really hard behind the scenes when you see so much that goes into the business. And to me, that's the fun of it. That's no 2 days ever become the same because of how dynamic it is.
Oh, absolutely. As you were saying all this, I mean, for a couple things came to mind. First of all, it's the amount of engineering that goes into curating, creating this experience, right? It's like I think of it in terms of most people have heard this by now that in an app or a system that feels simple and intuitive is really, really hard to make. Right.
Right.
It's a lot easier throwing a bunch of slop and features and stuff like that into something that feels complex.
Of
Something that
course.
actually feels intuitive is actually like that's the hard part, and that sounds like what you're doing. You're curating every single detail, applying all kinds of psychology into it. I don't know if you incorporate like feng shui and principles about that, so
Oh, yeah.
obviously like coloring and positioning and all that. When you think about that entire experience and what you want a person to feel, not only as a brand for when you walk into that restaurant, but also even uniquely to every single person that's there. So they have their own unique experience. I can imagine. And then doing that on top with very small margins, right? Because innovation in this space, from what I understand, you don't have endless amounts of funds to dedicate to R&D. So you've got to be super
Correct.
clever in how you differentiate. So
Yeah.
with that perspective, what does innovation mean to you when you think about kind of like the constraints that are inherent in what you do, and yet you create a very unique experience?
Yeah, it's a great question. To me, it's interesting. I think the term innovation can get very confused, especially in my industry. You see a lot of these companies or CEOs, we're innovating on this and we're innovating on that. And in the reality, I think, at least from my perspective, is that innovation for me now is actually simplicity.
Hmm.
And that sounds counterintuitive, but it's very challenging. Like simplicity is very hard
Yeah.
because there's so many things that people are looking for. And to me, the innovative front, I look at this kind of in two parallel tracks. There's the behind the scenes that no one sees and no one touches, and the guest never is exposed to, but is indirectly exposed to. And that's a lot of ways when we innovate is in terms of how can we use technology and data that we have on our guests to be able to curate better experiences without them knowing. Right. There's the easy ways you see a Starbucks app or things of that nature, and you pop up and it has your profile and your preferences. And that's great. Those serve a phenomenal purpose. In full service dining, I don't think people are looking to have interactions with technology as much as they are in a coffee shop. So, how are you using the back end to analyze historical traits, how the menu's going, what happens seasonally? When Nick comes in on Friday night with his family, he chooses to eat and drink this way, but during the week at a business dinner, he goes this way. Great. How do we be able to curate, understand that? The innovation is actually simplifying it down of knowing, I just know Nick has two types of dining experiences, and I'm going to simplify that for him
Mhm.
versus all of these complex things. I think far too often, especially with us, we have so much data now. And the restaurant industry hasn't been great at collecting data for many years. We've been behind technology for decades. And we have so much data and it becomes analysis paralysis.
Oh yeah.
And we think that all of a sudden, oh my goodness, and we try to connect 100 dots at once to end up back in the first two dots you connected.
Yeah.
So for me, the innovation that we're looking at is more about simplicity and saying that's everything from design to experience. Like we built a restaurant in Charleston on King Street, historic part of the city, and we wanted to do something that the design was very different. We wanted to really pay homage to the city. So we got all reclaimed iron from all along the city and we built all of the rails, the stair rails underneath the bar
Yeah, that's
with all
cool.
of that. We had the walls, it was actually used to be an alleyway, were original from 1896. The rafters original from 1906. We wanted to just leave it.
Hmm.
And we weren't calling anything to it. We weren't, making a big facade of like, please look here. It just was the simplicity of those little things. And then when people look like, oh, that's really interesting. What is that? Let me tell you a story.
Yeah, those are the
And
best.
yeah, it's phenomenal. And I think oftentimes, at least in our industry, it gets confused because innovation, and even the health space, right? it's new medicines, new technology, new ways. Like there's so many things that truly innovate new ways to do things. There's only so many ways you can put a taco on a plate. Like,
Mhm.
I can get a new piece of equipment and things of that nature, fine. But the ultimate piece of ours, like there's some timelessness to what we do, that it's about connection and good quality food and drink. So we look at it as really trying to make sure that the fundamental part of what we're serving to a guest, what they're really paying for, um, is as simple to understand as possible. I think that's the big thing. I listened to an article about Chili's. Chili's industry is like booming. These guys have just defied trends for 3 years. And their big thing was like, we figured out the one thing that people loved about coming to our restaurant, and we just did it really well and we talked about it. And they have been like this industry leader for us, up 30%. Everybody's like, "Oh, I can't figure out how they do it." Like, it wasn't complicated. Like,
Mhm.
we innovated on what we knew was really good. And I think, while it sounds counterintuitive, at least in our industry, it's not. And I think that's where people are getting confused of, I have to create a new way to do it. No, pizza's been pizza for a long time. Like,
Mhm.
no one's changed the way a pizza is really served overall, but it's about how it's delivered and how that connection to the brain comes afterwards.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's innovation is one of those like words that means something different to different people, and some people
Yeah,
think it automatically means investing tons of money into technology, and it's like no, actually, it's how you differentiate. It's how you compete. It's how you create anything from new technology, new drugs, to new experiences. You know, I've interviewed people across the board, and it's funny because you sometimes I've talked to people, elite MMA fighters or
yeah,
somebody in opera, and you ask them like, "How do you innovate?" And they're like, "Well, we don't really innovate in this field. It's not that's not something we do." And then you start probing and asking questions, not using the innovation word, but asking how you compete, how you differentiate. You know, what does it mean to you to take the field and evolve it over time so you can become better at it? And then they start chiming up and they start lighting up about all the different things. And it's like you do
sure.
innovate. Like that
Yeah,
is innovation. It doesn't have to be technology. It's just how you do what you do better. And so much goes into it. Like you said, it doesn't have to be 1,000 data points. It could
no,
literally be okay. When Nick comes in every single Thursday, he tries different tacos, but he always orders a coconut margarita,
yeah.
right? And it's like, let's just
It's
make
that
sure we
simple.
flag that.
Yeah, I like that innovation is how you compete. I mean, you're 100% right. It's not. I think too often, especially with how booming every conversation is with tech and AI, people think it has to be centered around that for some reason.
Yeah.
And there's no correlation necessarily, especially in places like this or MMA or singing. It's incredible.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the way that some of the the premise behind this show is that innovation is essentially the same as mutations in biology. It's not how we evolve biology, but it's how we evolve society. And so when you think of it from that perspective, innovation can mean anything as long as you're
Sure.
advancing your industry and society as a whole. And that's why it's so interesting talking to people here because I'm talking to you, the CEO of Bartaco. I've talked to people from the former CEO of Blockbuster,
Oh
people
wow.
from opera, people from tennis, people from MMA, people from NASA, and everybody views it differently in different time scales, different horizons, or different approaches. All together, it just really kind of maps kind of the human psyche of how we evolve society, which makes it really interesting. And in this case, like you said, right, there's only so much you can do to the food. So what you guys are doing is creating an experience, which really dives into the big question that I had for me. I mean, there are a bunch of questions that I'm fascinated by what you're doing, but the big one to me is like how do you differentiate? How do you create a new experience in a field where tacos are everywhere? I mean, I could walk down the street. I could buy them in the grocery store, right? I can order
Right.
them. They are so ubiquitous. And yet you guys have managed to create a flourishing brand and unique experience in a field that's saturated with different people's perspective with something that is fairly well defined too, right? It's not like you're going to convert a taco into a pizza or something different. It still has to be
Right.
a taco. And yet it's awesome going into a bar taco. I've been to it plenty of times and it's always um in an environment where it's like friends, you know, like, hey, you know, we haven't seen each other in 6 months. Let's go get a drink. Let's go to bar taco. It's like that kind of an experience.
Yeah. I mean, thank you for the kind words, first of all.
Mhm.
But I think there's two components. I think the one, which is a little bit more technical, but is important, is when you look at the taco landscape, which 15 years ago when we started, it wasn't a thing. I mean, it was Taco Bell and it was Chili's doing fajitas. I mean, these street style small tacos in full service didn't really exist, and it's grown a lot, which is fantastic. Um, but I think the key of us is when we initially started, uh, the menu was gluten free minus desserts 15 years ago. That maintains today. 15 years ago didn't matter. It wasn't a big deal, but now it is, right? These dietary components are massive. I think when you look at the landscape, how much it's grown a little bit more traditional, like Mexican American, where you've got 2 to 3 tacos, rice and beans, or like big burritos, and they're really not the way that people are eating authentically when you go down to Mexico. We do trips every year all across Mexico to really get inspired. And for us, these small, bite-sized street style food is interesting. And the other thing for us is that we get international flavors from around the world. We've got Asian flavors, we have Mediterranean flavors, we've got South American, and we use those really for kind of to make it a little bit more interesting and not just your standard carne asada, carnita. Like it's all the basic stuff. And I think we've put a little bit of a twist. And interestingly enough, no one on a mass scale has done the street style component to tacos that we've done. Our tacos are smaller, the 2 to 3 bites. Everybody else's tend to be a bit larger, and we like that. So that gives us a little bit of an edge. The big edge I think that we have that for some reason no one's jumped on is we fresh squeeze every drink, every juice in our restaurant to order. And at a casual dining level, I don't know any brand that does that. They
Mhm.
might get a fresh quote unquote squeezed juice that comes in a container from their produce company. But anybody doing fresh squeeze is usually high end dining, fine dining, or craft cocktails. So to us, that's an edge that I believe that we have above everybody else. I think you heard me mention about the space in Charleston, and we do this in the restaurants. We put a lot more time into our space than I think most people do. Some people figure out the design, they put them up, and they, put their booths where they need to put them, and they move from there. We're really meticulous in terms of the art itself that goes up. I mean, I've literally spent, I think I'm on my fifth round of the past 3 weeks picking art with my design team for a restaurant we're constructing right now because we want to make sure that each piece isn't just oh yeah, I see that in every bar taco. It's like, oh, that's interesting. That's there. It's there for a reason. So I think, and maybe this is a little too confident to say, but I think we are much more intentional about the things that we do than other people in the space because they saw this. Everybody loves tacos. To your point, great. I can do a taco place, and you can, and there's some great ones out there. I think that's one piece. I think the second one that I believe that is a real competitive edge for us is that vibe. We use that term with our team a lot. We talk about vibe every day in our restaurants, and that could mean music. We do fresh planted plants everywhere from outside to inside. That's part of the vibe. It's the way the air is, the way the windows are up, the way the fact that we bring the outside in, the way that the bar and the fresh squeezing the juices and the shaking of the tins you can hear when you walk in. The fact that our bars are connected to our kitchen, that you pull that energy, all
Mhm.
those things are very intentional. But I think that experience and that vibe when you walk in one of our restaurants on a Friday night, I don't think anybody's been able to recreate as well as we have. And that's something that we spend probably more time than we should, but by design on. So in a crowded field, I think we know our lane is that we create the best vibe and we're coupled with amazing food and drink that's also differentiated. But, a Baja fish taco is a Baja fish taco. It's relatively the same. So that has to take the edge. So for us, we spend time, money, research, to your term, innovation, really on that vibe component and what's to come in terms of what our guests are looking for. And we adapt pretty quickly in those things.
Yeah. And as you're putting all these things together, the thing that comes to mind as well as back to the original conversation we were having around that communal sense of dinner. Part of that is also the familiarity, the
Right.
the reliability of having that common environment all the time. And we've talked about the everything that goes into the environment that you build and then how you're thinking about new ingredients and new experiences and so on. So how do you balance that need from the guests, which is it's complicated, right? Because like you everybody's got a different thing that they're looking for. But on the one hand, if you're thinking, I'm going to go have tacos, there is that reliable favorite kind of food, which is like, I'm going to go have tacos. But then if they go to bar taco, it's going to be a different experience. There's going to be a novelty. And so you got to balance that, like keeping the comfort of a taco meal, but
Right.
also adding that novelty that makes you unique. How do you think about it from that perspective so that you don't innovate beyond the core of what makes you unique?
Yeah, I mean, what's really interesting is that over the course of 15 years, and we just went through this because we hit our 15th anniversary this year, there's a handful
Congratulations.
of items. Thank you. There's a handful of items that have not changed since day one. I mean, they've just been that steady component. And I think it's really challenging to be everything to everybody, especially in the restaurant space. If we listen to every guest and what they asked for and what they were looking for, our head would spin. And our brand never has been someone that chases the trends. It's never been someone that says, "Oh," a perfect example. I was just talking to our equity firm about this. Um, right now, everybody's talking about high protein. You see it on Chipotle's menu, and you see these GLP-1 sections of menus, and you see that the next up is fiber, and all these people are chasing like, "Oh, this is a new thing. I'm going to do," and they spend all this time and money and resource and marketing dollars to try to chase something that in 6 months goes away versus focusing on the core of saying, sure, those things are great. And maybe you're buying some guests and maybe they jump there for once, but it's probably not the thing. What are you to them every day? Like,
Mhm.
what is the thing they always know that you are reliable for? And I think for us, that's always been our mantra. Is like we are the steady, reliable place that you always know you're going to get some of your core favorites. You're going to get things that are a little bit timeless. Our food intentionally is simplistic. All of our tacos only have like up to three ingredients or components on it, all done from scratch, all high end, but there's something a little bit different about it. And that's because we don't wanna overcomplicate it. You see some of these things where it's like, "Oh my goodness." Like, I read menus and there's 92 ingredients, like, "Can I just have it without these 10?" And then you start customizing menus and it changes the experience. So for us, it's really about making sure that our core tenants are executed phenomenally and they consistently deliver the way the guests want to, and we've been fortunate that those have worked for many, many years. And
Mhm.
then there's that little bit of piece where, we update some things, but anything we put on the menu, it's not a because it's hot right now and it's a new trend. It's something that we believe could be a staple for us for a long period of time. And then we sprinkle things in just to keep, to your point, some of the excitement. We have what's called a secret taco. So if you know type thing that you walk in and you ask, "Oh, what's a secret taco?" And we always have one rotating kind of behind the scenes quiet thing that if you're in the club, if you will, you know about it. So that's where we can have a little bit of fun and do some, some more exciting components. But again, I guess kind of goes back to that theme. Like simplicity is hard, but it works really well if you're good at it.
Oh yeah, and also knowing at the core what your business is about, right? And a lot of companies, most companies have a mission statement. They have objectives of what defines them and who they are, and so that really helps in aligning incentives, but also helps understanding what belongs and doesn't belong in your culture, in your environment, in your menu, in your experience. And those things often come very handy when times are difficult because it kind of it's your north star that says this is what we fundamentally are. You were mentioning before Chili's, right? Chili's been around forever. I didn't know
Right.
they were doing so well. And it's like you said, it's like, well, we make certain things really well. Let's just go back to that and talk a lot about that. They're like, okay, this is our mission, this is what we do. And that often helps you um get clarity around what is fundamental to your business versus what is noise.
Yeah. It's funny you bring up like the mission statement component. Like we don't have a mission statement. It's just not our thing. Like I've seen far too many times in my career, even companies I've worked for, that you have this mission statement and these core values, and you post them on a beautiful thing in the back, and everybody, like, oh yeah, that's our mission, and then you make a decision, and no one ever talks about it in a meeting. They never bring up the core values in the meeting and say, well, hold on, wait, is that our core tenets? And they just start doing things, and that a mission or core values, in my opinion, it's your filtration process,
Hmm.
right? It should be something that should go through and say, does this line up with your brand?
Yeah.
That's the easy question. So for us, our brand, we always say we constantly think guest first. So anything that we do, first question we ask people, is it better for the guest? Mm, I'm not sure. Then we're not going to do it.
Hmm.
There's things operationally that you do behind the scenes, but like that filtration piece is really everything. And I've always found mission statements to be so amusing because it's like
Hmm.
if I could go into a company and ask their ground level employee, someone driving a forklift or stocking a shelf or clearing a table, what's your mission statement? And they can tell you, and they actually know what it means. right? Then you've done something incredible. Like it's the old JFK story, the NASA story, or the janitor. I'm sure you've heard this before. Is like
Yeah.
he goes in, what are you doing? I'm helping put a man on the moon as he's sweeping the floors. To me, like there's a mission that he understands.
Yeah.
But very few and far between do you find companies that do that. And I think you're right. It becomes, they try to veer off because it's the new recent trend or the shiny ball down the hallway versus just saying like, just be true to who you are. That's what got you to where you are today.
Hmm. Yeah, totally. You talked about incorporating technology before. Do you have examples of how that using the behind the scenes technology led to a different experience or an insight that you didn't know before? Like how are you using technology in that perspective?
Yeah. So for a lot of us, it's interesting. We have about just over 5 million individual records on our consumers. We were doing post COVID, the digital dining, as everybody knew, scanned a QR code. We were doing that for an extended period of time where guests can, and they still can today if they wanted to, you can order digitally on your phone. It goes right to the kitchen. It's kind of like your own curated experience. And it's about a third of our guests choose to order that way. But because of that, we get a lot of really unique information about both of our guests and just kind of some habits across the board. And ultimately, what became more fascinating to us was looking at the differentiation by day part, as well as by like group size, and saying, okay, how does the consumer truly act differently at lunch? Like, sure, theoretically, it's easy. They might eat less, they're not going to drink as much, but all these things, and that wasn't necessarily the case for our brand. And being able to take all of that data we had and cross-reference that with general data, household income, psychographic, archetypes, things of that nature, and being able to actually subset our restaurants into mini cohort groups. So we have 3 mini cohort groups within the company. And based on those cohort groups, one in downtown Boston and Seaport acts very differently than one in suburban Raleigh, North Carolina. And I think a lot of brands, especially when brands get larger and grow, they tend to treat everything somewhat the same.
Hmm.
And they think that, well, it works here, doesn't work there, but it's fine because it's good for the brand versus really delineating not just your marketing, not just a menu, but we actually take it down to how are we hiring the talent at that location?
Yeah.
Because a general manager at a location in suburban America versus urban America needs to look very different. But at the core, they have to still be somebody that's good for our brand. We've taken a lot of like really, really methodical data, turned into qualitative ways of being able to put the right people in front of the right guests.
Hmm.
And what's been amazing is I started 5 years ago. Our guest sentiments, we measure them 1 to 5, was a 3.8, I think 3.86 or 7 5 years ago. We're running a 4.74 this year from just these little tweaks. And it's not like our service hasn't fundamentally changed. Our food hasn't fundamentally changed. The environment's still, the same philosophy. But what we really did was make sure that we're curating who we're bringing into the restaurant based off all this data and saying, Nick is the primary consumer coming into this location. What is the person that's going to connect with what Nick is using our restaurant for? And all those individual records behind the scenes with a lot of analytics and a lot of AI. And I'm simplifying how much work this really
For
was,
sure.
but taking all that and now being able to be on the 5 yard line and say, now we can really make qualitative decisions, people decisions, environment decisions based off years of data research, I think to me is really fascinating. Because now we're starting to get in the psychology of it.
Yeah.
And it's
Oh yeah,
just
for
that
sure.
that world opens up so much more. Um, but it's been a really, really fun project and journey to get us where we are.
Oh yeah, I mean, you were talking before about how you design your restaurants in different places depending on the history or the materials that are there, and yeah, I think it's such a cool experience to go somewhere where you know that the experience will be somewhat consistent because it's bar taco, and then there are core elements about it that are like, okay, when I go to a bar taco, I expect these things, but
Right.
then there's that novelty and that surprise of like if I'm traveling and I'm in Nashville or if I'm in LA and I walk into a bar taco, it's going to be there's going to be a novelty to it that kind of embellishes and decorates the core that I'm used to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it always drives me nuts when you go to some restaurants. Like you already know where the bathroom is, even though you haven't been to that location. 'Cause it's
Yeah,
the same spot in every single restaurant across
that's
the
right.
country for. I'm like, It's just you carbon cut it, and then I think you become loyal to the brand, but it's not as exciting to see a new space. Whereas for us, I love people going like, "Oh my god, I went to your one in Coconut Grove. It's beautiful. It looks like, a
Mhm.
Grecian village." I was like, "Yeah." And there's some that look somewhat similar, and that's just by nature. You don't want to get too far away, but when you find those core things that you never go away from, but you really pull in some of those fun elements, we want something exciting, and that's a little minor tweaks to the menu. Like we offer certain things in certain regions. It's nothing
Oh,
crazy. It's
interesting,
one or
yeah.
two things. It's
Mhm.
like, oh, that's interesting. I went to Colorado and you have lamb on the menu. Yeah, it works great in Colorado. People love it. What'd you think? Oh, it was incredible. I'd love to have it back in, wherever, Georgia. Um, so those kind of stories I think are really fun. They're exciting.
That's actually super cool because yeah, I was thinking about that as you guys are growing, you're successful, you're growing. There's the risk of becoming just another chain, but you guys do so much to make each location unique. And I didn't know that you were doing that. That's actually super cool. Where it's like, what is the local cuisine or the local type of food? If you're coastal, maybe it's much more seafood. If you're in Colorado, maybe you have lamb, and you incorporate those ingredients into your menu. It doesn't define the entire menu. There are probably some consistent things across all of them, but
Right.
it's like, well, if I'm in Colorado, I might as well try. I remember one time I was traveling in Estonia, and I found myself eating in a square, and a restaurant had like black bear on the menu, and I was
Interesting.
just like, I don't know if I really, but I had to try it.
Of
It's just one of
course.
these
Of
things of
course.
like I'm in Estonia, I've got to try it,
Right.
and it kind of gives you a little bit of like, especially if you're traveling, some local experience that you would have had otherwise.
Yeah,
And if you are
absolutely.
local, then it just gives you a little bit more feeling of home.
I think that's the key. Like, we just opened up in Bethesda, Maryland, and we did a crab taco because in
Oh
Maryland, crab, it
yeah.
makes sense. And it does really well. And people are like, "Oh my god, that's really cool." And you douse it in Old Bay because that's what they do in Maryland. And in those little things, kind of my earlier points, like the little subtle things that they don't necessarily realize, but they realize is huge. And I think the best compliment that I receive, being here in Connecticut where we started, people like, "Oh, you're the CEO of Bartaco. It's cool. You guys have what, 3 locations?" It's like 33. Like, what do you mean? Like in these markets, interesting. Like we have these little clusters, like in Georgia, Virginia, and most markets don't realize that we're this bigger brand. Like we're not huge. We're 33, but I think we outkick our coverage. But that to me is the best compliment that people are like, this, I thought this was just a Connecticut thing, or this is just a Georgia thing, or it's a Virginia thing. And we really push our general managers to be part of the community. Like we have a director of local store marketing. That's all they focus on, is to make these brands feel like they're part of the community and not just another quote unquote corporate restaurant coming in and just, trying to make their claim. We really want to be part of the environment. And that's not just, the design is one component. That's kind of step one. But step two is it's like you're sponsoring a baseball team, you're going to local Pilates studio and doing their happy hour, and you're hosting mom groups. And that's what we think is success, right? There's revenue can define many things, but sometimes revenue can be bad. It can be
Hmm.
fake. For us, it's what is the breakdown of revenue? If you're getting those social groups and those fitness groups and those local communities, and the teams are celebrating after a high school varsity team wins a game with you, you're part of the community. And those are the
Yeah.
restaurants I think that win. And to your point, it's really hard to grow and still keep that, you know, kind of local aspect front of mind. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges that we fight every day, and we're going to fight as long as we can.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to me, revenue is really it's a reflection of value creation. And so if you start analyzing from that perspective, you can really look at it as like, okay, is this a one-time pop because it's Cinco de Mayo, for example?
Right.
Or is it something that's persistent because people are finding a value that either you consciously created and it's like, okay, they're responding to that, or maybe there's a value that you inadvertently created that people are finding. And if you identify that trend, it's like, well, is it worth leaning into that, or is it something that's more of a distraction? But the data really trickles that out so that you can now be very intentional about what value you drive, right?
Yeah. And funny you bring up value because it's been such a big topic for me, like publicly and with our companies. It's such a big term in the restaurant space right now. Is I'm going for value. I'm going for value, and people often confuse value with price,
Hmm.
and it drives me nuts when people do that because a 3 Michelin star dinner can have great value because you're getting more than you're paying for if it's done right. And we work on that equation. I look at the value equation of what you give over what you get. So a guest is giving up choices and time and money and all of these things. We have to deliver more than what they gave up. And
Mhm.
I think that's where a lot of people get confused in terms of what they're trying to provide. We see restaurants, you know, discounting and value menus and all these things. And it's a ploy to your point of, is the revenue real? Is it something tangible, or are you just buying guests? And
Mhm.
I think the industry for quite some time now has been buying guests, and like, we don't discount anything. I give away plenty of tacos, but we don't ever discount, because to me, if you can discount your food once, then you shouldn't have
Mhm.
charged them the inflated price the first time,
I
right? Give
I
the
think
guests what they
about that
deserve.
too. Yeah, when I see, it's funny. My wife will come to me and say like, or I hear other women talking about how, I have to buy these jeans because they're only $150 right now, where usually they cost $575, and I'm like, jeans shouldn't cost five hundred and seventy
Right.
five
Yeah.
dollars, and if they're discounting it, they're still making a profit, right? So you
Of
got to
course.
think about.
Yeah. It's wild, right? So, and things have been really challenging for the restaurant space for a number of years. So people they get a little bit more desperate, but it becomes a game. So I discount something this year, but then next year when I have to roll over that number, what
Yeah.
do I do? Do I discount more? Do I raise
Hmm.
my price and discount the same dollar amount, but ultimately I actually am making more money, which is it's this like nonstop, merry-go-round that people get on. And for us, like, charge them the right price, give them an amazing experience, and value creation goes through the roof. I think it's one thing that we've been successful with, is we sit in between this, fast casual dining sector, but our value, we're cheaper than going to Cava, than going to
Hmm.
Chipotle. I had a call from somebody yesterday. They go, my wife and kids went to your restaurant and walked out for 38 bucks. Like, how is that
Yeah.
possible? Like, because it's good value. It's not about the
Hmm.
dollar amount. It's not about, it could have been $380 if you're to find a restaurant, but what he was telling me was the value was insane. I went in and had this great experience for $38, and
Hmm.
that just doesn't seem like they can't register that. And to me, that's what we try to look at, is how do you have that conversation up with every guest? Oh, I
Oh
can't
yeah.
believe that's all it was. And again, it's not the price, it's the value that they receive during that. And that's where experience and environment and vibe make a difference, because it makes a $4 taco seem like it's worth eight.
Well, yeah, but I think also the other inherent part of that is trust. Because if I'm going to a restaurant and I'm seeing them giving me these radical discounts, and it draws to my mind at least, well, then why were you charging again? Back to the blue jean
Right.
example, why were you charging me that before? Then why are you going back up to that if you can obviously do run a business on a certain amount? And if you're giving me such a big discount on the tuna on a Tuesday, is it because you're trying to get rid of it and it's like a week
Right.
old? So it brings all these questions that I don't want to be asking when I go to eat at a restaurant. Like, I want to go to a restaurant, I already committed to eating there, and so it's like, change the experience in different ways and add value in different ways. Don't show me how the sausage is made in a way, because I don't want to get to that level, because it's just going to linger in my mind next time I'm there.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you're absolutely right, at the nail on the head with the trust component. And that's our, if we have trust from our guests, then whatever it is that we do, they're going to believe us, right?
Hmm.
Meaning they put a new item on, you tell us that we're going to bring in new chairs, new unit, whatever it is. If they have that trust, they're never going to feel like you're taking advantage of them. And that's something we never want to do. I mean, we haven't taken price in almost 2 years. The industry's taken, and I think they've outpriced the consumer heavily. I think 2025, people took a lot of advantage of the consumer because inflation was high and you had tariffs and you had labor implications. They said, "Oh, we'll just pass it along." I think consumers are pushing back, and when you see how much they're struggling, a lot of bankruptcies going on in our industry, I think more of it's because they took advantage of the guest. They defied
Hmm.
their trust, to your point, and those people that didn't, that said, "Hey, we recognize you're choosing to spend your money with me, and I'm going to make it worth it for you." Those are the ones that you're seeing succeed and prevail, and have great success. And I think the guest is getting a lot smarter than certain brands give them credit for. That's great.
Yeah. When I was growing up, I used to work a lot in restaurants, and one thing that I can't help but think about is the importance of your frontline staff. And so everything you're saying, from like the design and the culture and the food and everything, the philosophy of how you operate is all great, but then ultimately it has to then make it into the minds of every person that interacts with your client, your customers, your guests. And I remember when I was in a restaurant, um, for me, it was a job, right? And for a lot of people, it's a job. But the way that you deliver that job can vary significantly, whether you identify with the brand and the mission or the philosophy, all the way through how you treat your employees, right? Because I remember if I walked in and my manager was stressed out and yelled at me, I wasn't going to be that friendly towards my guests because I was already in a bad mood, right?
Of course.
But if I was feeling great, then I would make my guests feel great. And so much of it is like everything that we're talking about, like how you build the core, how you create the brand, but then that has to radiate through your staff so that eventually it gets to the client because they're ultimately the first line in front of that client. How do you make sure that everything we're talking about here really permeates all the way to the client? It doesn't stop at your front line.
Yeah. Oh man, if I had the perfect answer for that, I'd probably be worth a lot of money. But I think the real key that we do is, we hire in our industry. It's a people business. We hire a person because of who they are, not because of what we want them to execute. Right. So a lot of restaurants now are saying, "Oh, the new workforce doesn't want to work. They don't want to, do what we ask them to do." I don't know that I agree with that. What I think is that they just want to have some autonomy. They want to be able to be themselves and not feel like they have to be the bartaco version of themselves. And we're trying to create environments that, one, they understand what the goal is. And the goal, we tell our team, is your goal is to sell fun. It's not tacos, it's not tequilas. You sell fun every day. That's the job. And we lead with that. So your frontline workers, whether you're bussing, washing dishes, behind the bar, your job is to sell fun and create that experience. And if that's their filter, if you will, then we've done a good job. And at that point, we say, here's some guidelines on how you're going to do that. Right. When a
Mhm.
guest comes to the table, you got to make sure you mention how they're going to experience this. So here's a few points you have to tell them, but tell them in your own way. Whereas a lot of restaurants you walk into, it's the same spiel, as they call it. Everybody says the same thing, different voice, but you're like, yep, I can repeat this back to you. Like, I used to work for a brand. I won't say who they were, but the spiel was the same for every person. And the guests used to come in, my regulars would be like, I could spiel you. Can you not do this, please? It's like, where's the authenticity, right? Where's that real connection? So for us, we want people just to be themselves and come in and say, hey, go have a good time. Just go
Mhm.
have fun. Like, if you miss filling up a water, but the guest is having a blast, they're not going to be upset.
Yeah.
If you think about it, when you think about the technical things you've missed in a dining experience, whether like your water wasn't full, the table wasn't clean, it's usually because the server wasn't, you weren't having a good time,
Mhm.
because you had time to focus and look and be like, I haven't had water forever. Like, hey, can somebody pay attention over here? I've had plenty of times where service technically hasn't been great, but I've had such an amazing time. I didn't care. And that's like, there's the infamous quote that service is a technical delivery of what you do, and hospitality is how it makes you feel. You focus on the latter component versus the primary. And I think that's how you get these frontline people to understand of, I'm not going to get upset if you forget to, tell them the secret taco if they asked. We'll coach you on it, but that's fine. But if they left and said, man, I had such a good time with Nick, like I literally was rolling the floor laughing, everything else can go away. I don't care.
Oh
Because
yeah.
that's what they remember. You don't remember the spiel. You sometimes forget the food. Not because it wasn't
Mhm.
good. It's just like, my God, I completely forgot what I even had for dinner because I was laughing so hard, I had such a good time. So
Yeah.
I think for us, it's more, if we get that message down to our team, that's the way the frontline people can do it. Whereas it's not, do this and do this and do this and do this, and then we win. It's just go out and be yourself and have fun. And that's
Mhm.
hard because we got 2,500 employees, and hiring 2,500 personalities is never going to happen. But if the leaders of restaurants push that down, at least we've got, a good captain leading the ship.
Yeah. No, I totally I agree. Yeah, it's my wife calls it the like the sock in the corner symptom. You know, is a if you're complaining about that, it's not the sock. It's something
Yeah.
else. It's
Yeah.
something much more fundamental. Because if things were great, then you wouldn't even notice that sock. So, like you
Right.
said, it's like if I'm complaining and I'm angry because my glass of water is empty, there's something else that's wrong. It's not that glass of water.
Right.
And we started by talking about the trends in the restaurant industry and how it shifted from a family friendship kind of gathering towards technology that's kind of wiped it out, but now it's coming back. So if we think about like looking 10 years ahead, what do you think the act of going out to eat looks like? Does it change? Does it become more of what it was before? How do you see the industry evolving from your perspective? And actually, how have you seen it evolving? Because you said you've celebrated 15 years now. So, what have you seen in that pathway till today, and where do you see it going over the next 10 years?
That's a great question. I think what we're going to see is a larger divide between the styles of service, meaning your fast food QSR. I think in 10 years is going to be so technologically forward in terms of tablets and robotics in the kitchen, and it's going to be primarily driven by technology versus a lot of the connectivity component. And I think people are okay with that at that level because I think you're going into a quick service restaurant, fast food, not because you're looking for an quote unquote experience or engagement, because you're looking for a transaction. It's like going into a store. I want to go in to buy a shirt. I need to wear the shirt and I'm going to leave. I go in a restaurant because I'm hungry. I get my product and I leave. I think the casual dining and fine dining component, um, I actually think to your point, we're going to revert back a little bit. But I think the reverting back is going to come with a level of personalization that they've never seen before. Meaning, I'm going to know so much more about Nick in allergies, likes, dislikes, that I'm going to be able to curate some really incredible experiences on the back end and have that data in my hands. The challenging part to your last question is how do you get your frontline people to execute all that data that we have? I think that comes from just going back to the old school component. I do think that technology is going so fast and it's so consuming and there's just so much information like popping off at you like in so many different manners that I think people are going to want to step away from it. And I do believe that in 10 years, restaurants are going to be back to being that escape from the real world. I don't mean real world entirely, but like it's going to be a place of like, oh, let's just go and sit down for an hour and have a cocktail and just let everything else go for a minute. And I think that's interesting. There was an article that came out that talked about this restaurant that was giving a 10% discount if you gave them your phone at the front door and put it in a locker because they
Mm,
wanted you to just experience the restaurant and who you're sitting with. And, maybe that's gimmicky and I don't think that's the component, but I think there's something to be said about that world is starting to come back up and you're seeing
mhm.
Gen Z say they're having like these anti-technology trends. I do think that's coming back because to your point earlier in the podcast, I think people are starting to realize what they missed.
Yeah,
And COVID exacerbated some of that. I always hate to use that as like a reference point, but we lost a lot of connectivity during that time for obvious
sure.
reasons.
Yeah.
And then when we came back, we had this technological boom that also allowed us to not have to interact as much as we needed to. So we've had like 5 years of kind of a separation of really shaking someone's hand.
Mhm.
And I think people are now realizing, man, that was really something special. There's a lot more to be said about looking someone in the eye in person, shaking their hand, sitting at a table. I think we're going to see a lot more of that in the coming 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I agree. If I think about the unique experiences that I have, I think about how places make us feel special. So we have a restaurant here that we cannot not go because our kids love going to the same place. So every time we get together, like, where do you guys want to go? It's always the same damn place.
Yeah.
And as an adult, I'm like, oh my god, I want to try something different. But it's like every time we walk in there, they make us feel like they know who we are and they remember us and they call us by our name. And that goes all the way to my mechanic. I've been going to the same mechanic for 20 years because I walked in once, super nice Italian guy, and made me feel welcome. When I went in the second time, I don't know, 6 months later, he called me by my first name. The first moment that I went in there, he's never forgotten. He
All
knows
it takes.
everybody by their name, and I'm like, it's not an unpopular mechanic. He's got people coming in and out, and yet he makes everybody feel so special that it's like, well, you have me. I'm not going anywhere else because Gus is going to take care of me, and I can trust him because he tells me when things I should spend money on, and he talks me out of things. It's like, no, you don't really need new brakes. You're fine. Wait another year.
Yeah. It's an old cheers mentality. You want to go, everybody knows your name.
Oh yeah.
I joke with my team, everybody has that bar that serves warm beer and cold food. But when you walk in, the bartender knows your name and it feels like home. So you
Oh
bring your
yeah.
friends.
Totally.
And that's real. That's a real
Yeah.
human connection, I think, that we need to get back to.
Yeah. So, Anthony, just with a closing question, I'd love to ask you, if you can kind of fast forward to the end of your career, and you're nowhere close to that, but you've done so many things. You started Del Fresco here in Boston, and obviously you're CEO of Bartaco. If you think about a place where you can reflect back on the body of your career, both things you've done today and things you're still working on, what do you think a best case scenario looks like that would make you feel like you've achieved your full impact? What would make you feel the proudest when you look back of what you accomplished during your career?
Yeah, for me, it's not like a tangible thing in the industry. It's about how wide my net is. And what I mean by that is I look at all the people that have worked for me in my career, from servers to managers, and I look at their success. And I still keep in contact with a lot of them. And to me, that's what really makes me the most proud. And that's what I hope when my career is done, I can look back and say, look how many other businesses or people or companies I've touched because I was a part of that person's journey. And to me, if I can look back when I'm done and have a net that just seems like I can't even see the end of it, I'm going to be the most proud.
Yeah, well, spoken like a true leader in the hospitality industry, right? What really goes to your heart is how you touch people's lives. So, with that, Anthony, this has been such a pleasure getting to know you, getting to know your business a little bit more. I look forward to the next time I get to step into a bartaco. I'll be thinking about you. So, with that, thank you so much for being here, and I hope we can have this conversation sometime soon.
100%, Nick. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
That was Anthony Valletta, and now UnNatural Signals.
Bartaco is differentiating itself in one of the most commoditized industries in the world. What really drew me to this conversation was that Anthony and his team have been creating a unique experience in a space where expectations have been baked in at a global scale. That's different from competing in empty spaces, in blue sky zones where innovators are defining the very experience that their services are meant to address. So if we look at what Bartaco has managed to accomplish, I think there are some key takeaways that we should hold on to. Firstly, the more digital life gets, the more valuable real-world escape becomes. Technology isn't killing restaurants, it's increasing their strategic importance. As screens dominate work and social life, physical spaces that enable real human connection become premium experiences. The signal here is that the restaurant isn't just selling food, it's selling temporary relief from modern life. Number two, commodity products can win with emotional positioning. Tacos are ubiquitous, cheap, and everywhere, the very definition of commoditized. Bartaco didn't compete on the taco, they competed on the feeling around the taco. The signal is, when the product is commoditized, the experience becomes the product. Number three, restaurants are competing against loneliness and overstimulation. The real competitor isn't another restaurant, it's phones, streaming, convenience, exhaustion, social disconnection. Bartaco positions itself as a place to pause, breathe, and connect. There the signal is, know the true competitor. It may not be in your industry. Number four, generational trends are reversing the tech-only narrative. Younger generations are not purely digital natives who want everything automated. They're actively seeking offline experiences and social environments. There the signal is that the pendulum swings. Smart brands anticipate the rebound. Number five, sense of place is becoming a strategic advantage. Quick service restaurants thrived on efficiency and speed. Now, casual dining is resurging because people crave environments worth spending time in. There the signal is, efficiency wins during acceleration. Experience wins during saturation. Number six, restaurants sell memory creation. Anthony's origin story centers on childhood memories around the dinner table. Bartaco intentionally designs environments that create future nostalgia. There the signal is, the strongest brands engineer moments people remember decades later. Number seven, the winning hospitality model is experience and consistency. The goal isn't luxury or exclusivity. It's reliably delivering a repeatable emotional experience across locations. So the signal is, scale the feeling, not just the format. And then number eight, social connection is a permanent human need. Technology cycles change, economic cycles change. The desire to sit across the table and talk does not. So the signal is, businesses built around fundamental human behaviors are resilient. Thank you for your attention, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to UnNatural Selection. If you enjoyed the episode, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone shaping the future. Explore more at unnaturalselection.net and connect with us on LinkedIn and Facebook. Until next time, keep evolving.